Senior Center Building Committee to order. First item on the agenda is a roll call. Jack Holloway.
Here.
Paul Malorani.
Here.
Teresa Manganelli.
Here.
Terry Marciello.
Yes.
No Jeff's in the other room. Diane Allen is unavailable. Lil Maselli here. George Hooper here. Dan Pilata and Lee Morissette. Thank you very much. Next item, I hope everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes from August 31st.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Motion to accept, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, unanimous. Thank you very much.
I voted.
All right. Next item is the update and schedule timeline. So, Dan, before we start with Lee, was there anything you wanted to discuss?
Not really. Lee's got a pretty good presentation that I think will cover anything I would say, and I'll just disagree with Lee's stuff as it comes along,
Just,
if it's not right.
absolutely.
Not that that's ever happened before.
Well, it's great. Well,
Get a
welcome.
meeting.
Welcome back, everybody. So, on our new year here, so.
Isn't everybody excited?
Yeah, here we go.
We're going. We are going.
We're moving forward. Exciting.
All right.
It's very exciting.
Lee?
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be back, by the way. It's good to see all of you again. And I'm still excited about the town vote. So here we are. We're beginning design development. What I want to do today is to run through a number of things in our agenda, which is a real quick description of the project schedule as we're looking forward through design. So not the whole project, but just to get through design. In other words, until we break ground, pretty much. Then I want to talk about what design development is as a project phase, because there's important things that happen now that haven't happened yet, and that we need to make sure we do before we go to the next phase, which is construction documents. And then we have a little bit of a crystal ball exercise with the next 6 weeks. And I have more questions than I have answers for that, but that's what you're all here for. So, project design schedule. Can everyone see that when their glasses are on? Can everyone see that all right?
Yep.
Sorry, Terry. So we are right here in early January, and we're looking at design development, which is going to last about 3 months. So 3 months for round numbers, at the end of which we will produce a 100% design development document set that will get cost estimated again, and that we will want feedback from you all on to get design approval to move to construction documents. And that's important because, and as we'll see in the next section, design development is where the design decisions are made, and construction documents is a phase that's based on those decisions. So we want to nail down as many design decisions over the next 3 months as possible. That's the goal. It's not that design can't continue into construction documents, it just becomes more difficult and we find ourselves backtracking.
That is a same thing, for those of you that were here last week, it's the same thing that Phil said. We start moving things when we go to construction documents. It affects engineers, it affects structural. No.
That's the question. Are we gonna get a copy of this at the end?
Absolutely. But of course.
I sent it to the chairman.
Yeah. I didn't email it out because I knew there was a change that was coming, which it did, so I didn't want to confuse it.
That's fine.
This will be sent out and all the members will get it. Plus a copy will go to WCTV.
The only change, in case you get the older version, is the 2 schedule slides. So during design development, I'll just keep going. Construction documents last for about 4 months, and at near the end of construction documents, we have a very important cost estimate, again at 90% CDs. CDs meaning construction documents. The reason for that cost estimate is that's our last chance to make sure the design is on track budget-wise. And if it's not, or when it's not, because cost estimating is more of an art than a science, I didn't say that in public. It is absolutely a science. It is fraught with uncertainty. So because of that, we need to protect ourselves in the bidding climate. And what we do is we come up with design alternates, ways to control the budget as kind of a stopgap at the end of the design process in case we're a few % over on a given thing. You saw this happen with the estimating that we did. We identified a bunch of items that could be either taken out or put in depending on the cost. It's the same thing, but we'll identify those for the purposes of bidding after that 90% set. Then we go to bidding. Oh, I have the permit set kind of marked in here because it typically happens near the end of construction documents, but we need to decide how that works together. Then we go to bidding. There's a pre-bid conference that we participate in with you to get things kicked off for all of the bidders, walkthroughs, that kind of thing. And then bidders always have questions, and we answer those questions in the form of an addendum, which is just additional information to the drawings as necessary to clarify bidders' questions. And the hope is over a couple of months we get to a point of getting to a GMP, or a guaranteed maximum price, for the project. And that sets us in motion, among other things, to start the construction of the project. And construction kickoff would be early October of this year. That's the hope, if everything goes smoothly.
We are starting in October.
Sorry?
We have to start in October. We are going to meet as many times as we have to, because inflation will chew this project up. So we're gonna run like greyhounds. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Inflation is not helping us right now. Yep, and we've set a price, so now we need to honor that. A couple things in the short term that we should talk about are the CM, or the construction manager, if you want to go construction manager. That's why there's a question mark on it. And that's a discussion we want to make a decision about now and decide what our project delivery is going to be, whether it's going to be construction manager at risk, Chapter 149A, or if it's design, bid, build, otherwise general contractor 149. Because if we decide to go 149A, we'd want to get them on soon so they could help us through the rest of the design process.
So we actually touched on this, Lee, at the last meeting, and I don't see the advantage on this project for a CM at risk, not only because of size, but it's a completely virgin site without any real problems. The advantage on the CMR would be maybe some help on detailing, and I think that between the two of us, we could do anyway. And I don't think that we'll get.
Dan,
I'm sorry.
if I can interject for a second. Yeah, just for some of the members here that are not also on that.
I forgot.
So-
I went off. Okay.
CMR, when he calls it, is a construction manager at risk. That's how we built our high school, and on our other project, we are discussing that, the benefit of going with that over design bid building. So, I'm gonna have Dan explain
I'll
it.
explain the two of you, and I apologize. Thank you. So design, bid, build is the way that all projects in Massachusetts were built up till the Construction Reform Act in 2008. And the Construction Reform Act introduced what's called CM at risk. And you bring the contractor in during the design phase, and it costs you. It's an extra layer of cost. And you have the ability of sending out packages of construction as it's being designed, as opposed to waiting till the end. There is some advantages to CM at risk, like when you did your high school, you had an existing high school, and you had to work around it, and you had phasing with the phasing of the football field and all that stuff. That's a great example of when to use CM at risk. You also have a better chance through CM at risk of determining who your end contractor will be. That's another positive of CM at risk. With the design, bid, build, on a project of this size, it'll be a lot cheaper to be design, bid, build than, in our opinion. CM at risk, you're allowed for projects over $5 million to apply to the Inspector General to have a CM at risk project, because you gotta apply to the Inspector General first. There's maybe in the 10 years, a handful of projects between 5 million and 15 million. They're mostly 30 million, 50 million, 70 million. So it's kind of on the really low end. So there's a lot of overhead on that low end that'll be chewing away from our building. So I'm 100% confident we'll get a good design, bid, build project not even worried about it one bit. With design bid build, there was a step that he doesn't have on here, which is pre-qualifications, which would have to do with CM at risk too, just a little bit slightly different, and pre-qualifications have to be done 120 days before we go out to bid, no greater than 120 days before we go out to bid. And that will require 2 volunteers from the town. And it's a lot of work for whoever volunteers to do that, Teresa, and, no, just kidding.
Yeah, we'll decide that at a meeting. We'll have yeah.
So, and then, you know, when the bid comes in, you have a bid, that's what your building's gonna cost. And, you know, subject to changes here and there. With construction manager at risk, there's a pool of money that's set in the middle, that's supposed to be used sparingly, but never is. There's very little of that money left at the end of the project. So it's kind of like they have a slush fund in which to take up things that got missed during the design, where with design bid build, he will document everything to the T. And every project we've done with Dietz for senior centers, which is Westfield, Greenfield, and Ludlow, were design bid build, and they were all very successful projects, as I suspect this one will be too. Does that help explain it?
Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Teresa.
just asked a question. What do you, first of all, I respect your opinion regarding the choice between the two, but how much money do you think it would cost, just in general?
If I had to guess on this project, and Lee and I might differ, but I'd say design bid, build would be about 14 to 18%, probably in the 16% range, cheaper to do design bid build,
Cheaper on the total cost of the
total
project.
cost of the construction.
So that's significant.
Yeah, because of scale. I
Because
was
of the
thinking-
scale.
Yeah, I was thinking more like
Size of the
10%, but
project.
larger
But
project.
even 10% is
A lot.
degenerate.
It's a lot, yeah.
We're gonna get there. We actually have a really hefty budget here. I'm not worried about the budget as much as the designer is. And a lot of that will, you know, the designer and I will flush through as we're designing to make sure that we stay on track. The estimates, at the end of DD, that estimate's really important. That will tell us where we have to push, pull, and trim if need be. But I'm quite confident we're in pretty good shape. We're building one right now in in Wilbraham, that's a 2-story, that's 15,000 square feet, so it's a little bit smaller. And it's a site that we had to bring a lot of fill in to bring up the site, and the construction cost on that is $11 million. And that was the third bidder. 2 bidders got disqualified. The low bidder was 8.9, so, and the town didn't want to wait the 4 months to rebid it. They said, go. So,
Did they have this? Wilbur?
they did a design bid build, so. And we poured our first foundation today, so I'm pretty excited about that.
And once we open the bids, we'll be able to qualify those bidders too. Same process?
Yeah, we'll qualify the bidders actually before the bids. We'll pre-qualify the bidders when they come in, and when we open the bids, we'll make sure that the bids are accurate. The fighting on pre-qualified projects lately has been at the qualification stage and not at the actual bid stage.
Okay.
All right.
Everybody understand that?
Thanks for that,
Do you
Dan.
need a vote? Are we?
I wouldn't say at this point, I would continue on, let Lee
I
continue
don't
with the
think we need a
spread.
vote, because
No.
we actually, I mean, I actually thought we were doing design bid build all the way through on both projects. On the other project, we are seriously looking at CM at risk, because it's larger, the cost difference isn't as much, and there are packages we can put out, such as ledge removal, earlier, and to help with schedule, to pull back that inflation on the total cost of the project. So we're looking at that for the other project, but that decision will be made next week on that.
And you have to go to the IG for that, correct?
All right. I've already
We'll
started the
discuss that
process.
on our next meeting, not this meeting.
Right.
Go ahead, Lee.
Thank you. So that means we don't have to do anything this week for the CM, because we don't have to do that, which is good. But this would be
You
the,
can bake ground in September, no, like.
Do you remember when we told you that we will argue?
Yep, a little bit.
but the good news is, we would want to make that decision now if we were to make it, so it's the right conversation to have tonight. So thank you, I appreciate that. As we move through DD, as we call design development DD, we will be meeting with the fire department, with the police department, with the maintenance department and capital maintenance, as well as the town planner, and all of the necessary town meetings to familiarize the authorities having jurisdiction with the project, so that they can have their feedback, we can incorporate their requests into the design. The fire department is one of the most important regarding access and emergency systems. But also the town planner, so that we know we're complying with all the zoning guidelines, and if we need any special help, we can get it, and we also want to make sure that we're not surprising anybody. So that's the kind of thing we do now, so we have time to
Yeah,
accommodate.
so we did talk to all these departments before we went to town meeting to see if there was anything glaring, and almost all of them said, yeah, it looks good, but we really want to see the detail. So we're at that point where we're creating the detail, and, they'll push back on some things, and they'll agree with other things, and we'll come up with something that's satisfactory to all departments.
Well,
And the state needs to get involved too, right? Because
For the
every time
highway.
we talked about access to the site, we've talked about the
We
state
need
has to approve.
we need a DOT permit, and that's, actually, I was gonna get to that
Okay,
once he was done with this. The one thing that I wanna get on immediately is the curb cut permit that we're gonna need from DOT, Northern Region. I think you guys are Northern Region DOT. Because it's a state numbered highway, and you don't control the road, the state does. They give the permit for the curb cut. And, they'll tell us what they want on that curb cut. We'll tell them what we wanna give them. But it's probably similar to what we carried anyway, which is granite curbs at a certain radius.
We use state guidelines for the design of it, so
Right.
it's just a matter of, do we have enough turn lanes, the
and
right.
they do a traffic study, or we do a traffic study, or?
We have a traffic study in the hopper, ready to execute whenever we would like. It's actually a proposal we had from the previous phase, but they're willing to honor it and move forward with it. That's SLR. Yep.
And does that determine whether or not there's signalization?
It
there?
will,
Yeah,
it will give some generalized information, but it probably won't go anywhere near that, just because of the nature of the use.
You're not gonna meet a warrant for a signal,
Okay.
guaranteed.
If this were a shopping center or school or something of some substantially higher daily use, maybe. But there's just not a big enough building, I don't think. I've been wrong a lot in the past, so
Yeah.
but, no.
I'd be shocked if they required a signal.
okay.
And you don't want a signal, it's $500,000.
I don't want to signal.
No, we don't need one there.
Right.
Yeah, there's a whole series of them on
Yeah.
that street. We don't.
There's already a flashed across crosswalk there, I believe, just up from the intersection, so that's a huge benefit for traffic calming at that intersection.
And brighter bulbs.
Yes.
Buy some LEDs.
Okay.
Any questions on the schedule? I know it's a little bit bare in the middle during construction documents, but that's because we'll have.
Basically, we're looking at construction in October.
Construction in October,
Let's get it
breaking ground in
started.
Believe it or
October.
not, April through July, we may meet once a month, and we may not.
Yeah.
There's not really a huge role for you during construction documents, unless you want to watch him draw the hinges to the doors and things of that nature. And you guys can make that decision when we get done with DD. After you see the DD set, you're gonna be pretty comfortable that you know what the building looks like, how the HVAC systems are gonna work, what the lighting's gonna be, and, what type of light poles are gonna be in the parking lot, those type of things.
So when you said plan on meeting a lot, is that, we've really got to get.
Don't plan on meeting during that
But
period.
before when you were saying we've got to get going, we've got to get.
Yeah, no, design development,
Is that the January,
yeah,
February,
I mean, we're
March?
looking at, we think we can meet monthly for the next 3 months and get through design development, because you're gonna get presentations at the next meeting from the engineers, right? Ish.
We're
And,
gonna go through that next.
okay. I'm gonna
We'll,
shut my
we'll
trap.
discuss it also in our next agenda item, what we're talking about for meetings. So we'll look through this here, and then we'll have our discussion.
Yeah. Any other questions? Excuse me.
Not on design development.
All right.
Well, I was gonna tell you what design development is.
Well, now that we're gonna do this, let's talk about it a little bit. I'll put it in context for the benefit of everyone, because I think this is important. Feasibility, and I know we've already done it, just hear me out. Feasibility is where we did site selection, building test fits, and we established the building program. What's in the building? What are the uses? How big should it be? Where should it go? That went on for a while, and we found a really good fit, and so that led us to schematic design. In schematic design, we did all those adjacency diagrams and building program explorations and came up with a building plan to fit on this site that responds to the nature of the building's character. And at the end of that, we developed a few drawings and systems narratives for all the building systems. So,
To which the estimate that we went to town meeting was based on.
yes. So the civil engineer, landscape architect, and the architect, us, we all made some basic drawings to describe what the building and the site look like. But the rest of the engineers, the structural engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, data, security, those guys did narratives to describe what the systems would be, but they didn't do drawings. They're going to start drawings now. So design development, it's what's up here. It develops the architectural character and detail of the building. What does it actually look like? How does the design play out across the building? And it integrates the systems into the building. So we said previously we're going to have a certain type of mechanical system. Now we're going to fit the actual mechanical equipment. We're going to test fit it in the building to make sure it fits, that we can route the ducts as necessary, that the equipment is sized and specified in a way so we understand how many pieces there are, where it sits, how it breathes, all those kinds of things. We're actually going to design the system. The engineers will design how many sensors they need and where the diffusers go and all of the things. I'm picking on a mechanical in this case, but that's how that happens. And it will be iterative, meaning we'll try some things and we'll find some clashes and we'll find some things that work and we'll come up with a building that works together. It's a lot like the systems of the body. At the beginning, if you have a description and then you have, what we actually look like, the design development is when all of the systems get put together, when the muscles and the skeleton and the nervous system all get put together.
That is the first time I've ever heard in all my years.
Yeah.
I try something new every
Design development turned into a human body.
Yeah.
For a project this size, do you use like BIM modeling or
Yes, absolutely. So BIM is Building Information Modeling, and we've been using BIM from the very first day. Yeah, extra points for George. 2 points for Gryffindor. And we've been using BIM the whole time, actually. Every model that you've seen except for that cover shot rendering, which came from a rendering program, which was powered by BIM, has been through Revit, which is the replacement for what AutoCAD used to do, where we draw digitally. Now this, instead of drawing digitally, we model digitally in a full-scale virtual environment. So when I say test fit, I mean I'll do mechanical again. We get a mechanical unit from a mechanical manufacturer, and we put it in our digital building to see if it physically fits, because it's a full-scale digital environment, so we can see the model in 3D. And from that, we make drawings.
you guys
One of the
kind of,
things
do you
that-
understand that, how it works? It's so when other or people that come in, installers, it doesn't run into each other. So they'll know well in advance if the mechanical's gonna
In
be
the
there,
old
if the
days-
sprinkler head's gonna be there, what's gonna, interact with each other.
Because you had pipes running into pipes and wires.
In
and
the
you
old
to
days, we
figure
had
that out
we
in
had a
real
lot of
time.
changes because of conflicts. We don't nearly have as many as we do today with Revit. We just don't. The one thing that we will be doing in design development, so we have the layout of that you guys all liked, that we all agreed to. And as he's developing the building, he might have to push a wall out a little bit, or a column's a little fatter in this spot. Those type of things will start to occur as he does the design development. He will come back and say, okay, because we have so much weight on this section of the roof, we had to add a column here, so we're gonna do a decorative column in the hallway, or something like that. All of those type of things pop up in design development, all right? And that's why we have design contingency in those estimates. Remember, we had that discussion. What's design contingency? Well, that's to take care of the things that he's gonna pick up in design development that weren't clearly identified, but we know is roughly 10 to 12% of the budget.
So during design development, we develop the design of the building and we try to agree on it as much as possible so that when we go to construction documents, we can document the architectural and engineering so it can be built. Or it should be architecture, sorry for the typo. The idea is that construction documents create the set of drawings and specifications that can be bid by contractors to actually build the building. They're not going to build it from physical models like really old days or from our presentations that we make to you. They need technical documents, and that is what construction documents is for. And because they're technical documents, they take a while to assemble because they're fully coordinated with each other and everything stitches together in a big set of drawings and specs.
And they'll be this thick? 24 by 36?
30 by
and they'll
40.
be 30 by 40, excuse me. They'll be bigger. And then you'll have two big books of specifications identifying each part to the building that, and what the acceptable manufacturers are to make sure that we're getting quality manufacturers for every single part in the building.
And you have to proofread everything.
And
My pleasure.
Teresa has volunteered again to proofread everything.
In addition to what Dan said, there'll actually be 3 manufacturers for every hinge, screw, and mechanical diffuser in the entire building because this is a publicly bid job, and we need to, by bid law, offer
Competition.
3 equivalent products. We will run into some cases where there won't necessarily be 3 exactly equivalent products because there are some novel building materials in the market. In those cases, we can go a couple of different ways. We can ask for a special exception and ask for permission to put in a proprietary product, meaning Kleenex as opposed to tissues. And the other option would be that we ask for a special, or we find other things that are roughly equivalent that we consider them equivalent. There's some bricks, for example, that are, there's nothing really quite like them. They're made a little differently, but you can substitute a couple of different versions of masonry to do basically the same thing. I say brick in a general way.
We will be asking George what he wants proprietary for. Usually proprietary is fire alarm system, so it matches all the other buildings, security system, so it matches all the other buildings, you know, things of that, building management system, so that George, you know, can pull out his phone and tap the high school, and then tap the senior center, and then tap all that kind of stuff. We want to make sure is integrated with George or his or her successor.
We understand that this is part of a campus of buildings in town, even though it's a standalone building, and so that's a good reason to go proprietary. After construction documents, we talked about this a little bit, it goes to bidding and negotiations. We talked about the bidding part, the negotiation part is just the other half of the phase, but it's when we're negotiating with contractors and answering questions and that kind of thing. Includes the advertising of the project because it's publicly bid, and also the selection of bids. It's a relatively brief but very exciting period in the job. And then we go to construction. And construction administration is the architect's role on the project because we administer construction. We don't build buildings. Contractors do. Architects just make the, they're not even instructions. They're the
You
biddable
tell them how to
documents.
do it.
Right.
We tell them when they do it wrong. Because they should be able to read the documents and do it right themselves.
And there'll be
That's the
nothing wrong.
There'll be nothing wrong. All joking aside, that is the basic flow of how design development fits in all of the design and construction phases. Any questions on this? So
I
far,
do
so
have a
good.
quick,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is, so on the bidding, so you put it out there publicly, so the businesses that bid on it, they'll know it's for Wilmington, they'll know,
Yeah.
so they could just look up town hall and see like what we've appropriated for it. Not that, I know they have to give you details, but,
The answer to the question is not only would they know what we appropriated for the whole project,
yeah,
they'll have access to all the presentations we've done.
right, okay.
But we actually have to tell them in the bid documents what the last estimate is.
Okay,
So the last estimate might be different from what was presented at town meeting. It might be less.
That's at the 90%, that's,
Right.
that is.
At the 90%, we will advertise what we expect the project to cost.
okay,
So, everyone thinks they look at that and then bid around that. They
Yeah.
don't.
yeah,
They really don't. 2 weeks before the bids come in, We will be taking bids for up to 16 trades. We probably have 10 of the 16 trades on this project that are called file sub-bid trades that were identified by the Attorney General and the Inspector General's office as to be bid earlier. And those bids come in, we determine whether the bids are valid, and then we post the list of those bids. And then the general contractors have to identify which one of those bidders that are taken. They always take the lowest, otherwise they don't have a competitive edge.
Right.
So they're gonna know what, 30 or 40% of the cost of the building is
Yeah.
2 weeks before they even bid this.
Okay.
Because they will have the file submit information.
Okay, great, thank you.
That filed sub-bid procedure is unique to this state and very few others, and is the real differentiator with
Cost.
cost and public bidding that makes Massachusetts a fun place to practice.
We are smarter than 49 other states, right, Paul?
Yes, we are.
There you go.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is go through the various design disciplines and tell you what we'll be doing during design development. So for landscape design, we are going to be developing the patio spaces and the trails, the trees, the plantings that are around the site, the garden planters and how they relate to the patio and the exterior environment, and of course the play spaces, the bocce and pickleball courts. Don't worry, the pickleball courts are there, they're just at the top of the screen, they got cut off.
I think that Diane would be upset that pickleball's not capitalized. Just saying.
I actually thought about that when I was doing this last time. It also comes second, sorry. So the landscape design is really going to be developing what it is like to be outside and around the building and on site, what it's like to, what kind of shade trees we'll have, how the plantings work together, the type of garden planters, those kinds of things, as well as contributing to the stormwater controls through passive measures like planting areas that can help contain and filter stormwater to some extent. So that's landscape design. Civil design, I chose these images on purpose. So landscape is nice and colorful, civil is nice and black and white. Civil design talks about the site grading, how we get stormwater to be collected and so it doesn't cause problems and controlled, how we bring the utilities onto the site, and it talks about site access and parking. In this case, site access is vehicular access. So that's that curb cut we started talking about. And there'll also be, they'll contribute to permitting because there's a fair amount of site permitting to be done with this as well.
Landscaping is usually the first thing we cut, just so you know, because it can always be planted later. The engineer doesn't want to hear it, but he's used to it.
That's why there are so many plantings on this illustration.
He's already got them in there so we can sacrifice them.
They're also the last thing to be installed during construction, and so if you run out of money, you run out of money, and that's kind of how it ends up going sometimes, that the landscaping gets cut. So keep that in mind as we're making decisions and moving through the design and construction process, that we want to maintain as much of the landscape intent and integrity as possible.
Teresa?
Yeah,
We're gonna,
Can you just,
Paul?
refresh my memory?
Check your phone.
The walking trail is only going to go up as far as the pickleball court and then turn around? Or-
Yes.
So it's not going into the land beyond that?
Correct.
So once we determine what we're doing with that land, Jeff, we could possibly extend the walking trail?
At a later time.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Down the road, okay.
To be honest with you, until we get into construction, once we're going, and, if you have extra contingency and we wanna, clear out the path, and maybe we don't have enough money to pave it, but we have enough money to do a dirt path or a gravel path or something like that, we can always talk about that during construction. But we didn't even, I don't believe that we even had the full survey for back there yet.
Right.
We do. I thought we just did meets and bounds.
There's some grading as well, yeah. The walking path that goes around the site, that goes from the front door and around the parking lot to pickleball courts, and then around the other side, and then back across here, and then across in front of the building. I think this is an older image, I'm sorry, I grabbed an old one. That is all going to be an accessible way. So it'll be graded in a way that you can roll on it in a wheelchair, or you can move on it without a major slope or cross slope.
It's pretty big. It's a pretty big loop.
It's a nice loop. Once you get into the trees, if it's a walking trail and there's roots and things, making it an accessible way becomes very challenging and may or may not be the character of the walking path that you want. It's really up to you to explore. But that's the nature of what we have here. Any other questions on civil?
I do have a question. So when we were going through this, your civil engineer took the liberty of taking a piece of the archdiocese's land?
This is an old illustration. We fixed that.
So, he asked, you realize we're not going on their property?
Correct. Yeah, we actually corrected that. I grabbed the wrong image. I do apologize. We are no longer crossing the property line. Our intersection is not perfectly aligned with the street opposite Main Street. It's close, and for all intents and purposes, aligned. But in order to perfectly align them, we would need to cross the property line to the north, which we don't.
It's good.
It just takes forever to get even an easement from the archdiocese. It's not easy.
This site doesn't dictate that necessity. This is not so built up that we need to ask for permission to trespass onto the other site, or get an easement in technical terms. All right. Any other questions?
Can I,
Yeah, sure.
so when it does come to this piece and for the landscaping, I mean, I know we do have to, there are times that, of course, inside the building, you've got to cut costs, maybe for landscaping. But I do have to say, just that, through COVID and everything, we realized how important outside is. So when we do, just kind of playing around with it, not just to disqualify any, like the way you were laughing about landscaping, I just want to make sure there is going to be, especially.
We're designing it with a full landscaping plan.
Okay.
But if it comes to the point where we have to decide whether we want to build a building or have landscaping, what are you going to choose?
Well, I'm not talking about like tree, I'm not talking about major things, I'm just saying to keep in, that was a priority.
No,
in
I
making
understand.
this, so,
He's probably got, looking at that building right there, he's probably got $80,000 worth of landscaping there. At least.
Which isn't a lot percentage-wise of the project.
No, it's not.
And-
Again,
There are quite a few trees
our,
there.
our goal is to put it all in,
Mm-hmm.
so that George can maintain it.
well, I just would feel I just needed to say,
Yeah.
that's all.
No, and that's why I made the comment at the end where we really need to keep in mind that that is designed just as much as the rest of the project, and we want to make sure it happens.
You know,
But just one point, as the costs get more clear and, you know, bid packages go out and so on, we will have an understanding earlier on as to what these costs all plugged in together are gonna be, so we're not gonna be in
Yeah.
the ninth inning with two out and say, we
No,
can't do the
you
landscaping.
missed the beginning part of the meeting. We went over the cost estimates, when we're gonna do them,
Yeah.
and how we're gonna steer the job to get to that point. So, but, you know, when we get to bidding, there's no question in my mind, the majority of landscaping will be an alternate. Because it gets done 14 months later or 12 months later.
Yeah.
And if we ran short and had to take 100,000 off because that was the alternate number, I have absolutely no doubt there'd be fundraising to raise $100,000
Yes.
somewhere in that 12-month period. And so it's like exactly what Lee had said. It's like an escape pod that we'll be using during the bidding process. You know, it might be that, some extra special trim on the inside or whatever. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we will.
Awesome.
Anything else? So I've split the presentation at this point up into interior architecture and exterior architecture because they really are different in lots of ways and require different responses from the committee, and they also require different efforts from the design team. The interior architecture is going to launch into a great deal of specificity next. We're going to talk with, I think room data sheets might be a good way to go. Room data sheets are basically, you know, tear-off sheets or cut sheets for each of the room types. So I'm looking at you, Terry, we get together and we talk about, okay, what exactly do we need in the fitness room for it to be successful? And we write down everything from the height of the mirrors to the number of shelves that we think will fit to exactly how many cubbies or hooks that we need on the wall, a bench or no bench, movable things, all of that. And we write that down and include a small plan of that so we know as we develop over the next few months that we've accommodated all the things that make that space work. And we do that for every single space throughout the building. And some we group together, like the admin suite will be one concept and the kitchen will be one concept. And that way we gain a better understanding of what's necessary. We get a better estimate when we go to get it estimated again. And we also can understand exactly how complicated some things are, like the kitchen. Like how far do we want to go with that? So it also gives you an opportunity to adjust the admin suite again as necessary based on staff and resources and that kind of stuff. It's like a second check. In addition, we'll also explore the major spaces of the building. And these are kind of two categories because one of the major spaces of the building is the green lobby reception entry lounge cafe, which is kind of the space between the two chunks of the building. So we'll look at that in 3 dimensions. We'll look at it from the inside perspective and elevation. We'll look at the materials that make up the finishes in that space. The major spaces are kind of the special spaces, the ones that deserve a higher level of finish or durability or a little bit more attention so they come out looking great. Not that the whole building won't look great, but there's always, that room in your house that is painted first or something like that. And then the other major thing that Dan spoke to earlier is the systems integration that will happen on the interior architecture. As we bring in the structural engineer and the mechanical engineer and the plumbing engineer, they'll say, I need a little bit more space, maybe between these toilets to make things work, or I need an extra column here, or whatever that is. And you'll start to see those things appear in plan. And some walls will get thicker, they usually get thicker, some get thinner, and we might have to move things around a little bit, nudge things to make things fit. If there's a roof drain or something that needs to come through, that kind of stuff.
I have to be honest, I want to punch that box. A little yellow box. A little yellow box that's following you around.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, that a picture containing a diagram. You like that? Yeah, sorry about that.
I want to kill it.
Yeah. Systems. The building systems that we have narratives for describing their components and characteristics, we will get real drawings for in design development. So we'll have structural plans, plumbing plans, fire protection, otherwise known as sprinklers. I'm looking in this room and realizing there aren't any. Just going to point to them, but they're not here. Heating and cooling. Ventilation, there's none in here other than the windows. There'll be active ventilation in this building, as we've discussed previously. And then, of course, power, which includes lighting, data, and fire alarms, so regular power and low power. And all of these things, it is the design team's job to integrate in the building so they work together and behave like a proper building when we're done with DD.
Can I ask a question? What's data?
Data,
Oh, sorry.
computers.
At that point, we'll be bringing in John O'Neill, our IT director, and just kind of start talking more and more about this so they can be.
He'll tell us, he's gonna tell us what he wants for racks, what types of racks he wants. And we're gonna, in the general, what we normally do in the general contract, and is, we run all the cabling and all the jacks and the patch panel in John's room. And then we test all of them to make sure they work. He gets a report saying that they work at the right data speed. And then he takes it from there. He puts his server in a slot for the rack, and then he jumps the cables. You go into those rooms, you see all those jumping cables. He does all of that. You're gonna have outlets here that you're not gonna use when you open. The next director might use. So he'll unjump the one you used and jump out over to the one that the new director wants to use. So that's what all that will when he's talking data, that's what he means.
Okay.
I've actually generalized television. It used to be tel data, which was telephone and data, but it's actually telephone, which is voice over IP very often now, so it's actually part of data. Data itself and cable TV, we'll figure out how much of any of those we need.
Yeah, we'll have to talk at some point to Wilmington TV to see what they want to bring their feed in, and do they want a feed out? Are you gonna broadcast your shows? Are you gonna have?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All that stuff, we want the building to be ready to go.
So how do we provide some measure of growth, so to speak, so that, nobody today can know 35 or 40 years down the line what the newest technology will be, but so that we don't have all the stuff that we have here outside of the, running along the walls.
Well, the short answer is we will bring our engineering professionals in and make recommendations to provide for that growth over the future.
I think if you talk to anyone in IT, they're telling you most of it's going wireless.
Right.
And we're gonna have a wired building, so you'll be able to take any one of those
Bluetooth
jacks
streaming.
Yeah.
and turn it into a wireless hub. I think that's what you're gonna see. But the truth of the matter is, when Cat 4 came out, we started wiring buildings with Cat 4. We'll never have to ever change Cat 4. I think we're at Cat 6A now.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
6A,
with Cat
yeah.
6A, right?
Yeah.
So, the wire takes more data with each generation. So as we're becoming more of a data society, when you stream a movie, that's a tremendous amount of data running down that little wire. And that's the part we'll do our
It's
best.
like 4G and 5G.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And they're
5G
trying-
stinks. It's not any good. I wanna go back to analog.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Flintstones.
Oh, you had better reception.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, of course you can.
So, when we were, say for example, Ludlow, like all that wiring and everything that we were talking about, that had all been, we're doing the same type of scenario where everything was up in the rafters, so
Everything
it's
will
not
be
like this.
concealed,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I have nothing against the engineering trades, but we don't want to see them.
Ever.
A fully integrated building, unless you want to see the engineering, and some buildings you do that, but in this building, I don't think that benefits us. It'll be fully accessible to, when we need it, whether it's a valve or a data center, a data rack or whatever it is, but.
Well, I guess the reason I asked that question is, say for example, when you said, for example, IT John, when he needs to get to the system, would he be, instead of going into a room to the system, would he be going upstairs, because,
No.
no, he'd be
He'll
going to
never
a
touch the
room.
wires.
Yeah.
If he touches the wires, then we didn't install them correctly.
Correct.
And one of the other things, especially with older construction like this, if you notice, there's no accessibility.
Right.
The newer
That's why you have
construction, right.
exposed
Everything's
lime over
surface
there.
mounted because there is no accessibility, everything.
Data closet.
Right. And then you'll have the suspended ceilings and
Okay,
different
I just didn't know
areas.
if, he'd go upstairs like with the heating and the AC and everything that was up in that attic.
He should only go to that patch panel.
Okay, wonderful.
Which will actually be in your office. It's off of this conference room right now in the admin suite.
Oh, perfect.
There's a main data entry that's down here somewhere in the bottom right corner, and then there's a middle server room to minimize the runs to the, you get a certain number of feet before you start having problems.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? These are really good. Exterior architecture. This is what does the building look like? Yeah.
I'm just gonna back up real quick, because I have, Diane Allen is texting me and has a question, an interior question, maybe premature, but
Yeah.
she's asking about the kitchen.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And whether or not the freezers and refrigerator are built in or not built in, or do we know that yet?
That is an excellent question. At this time, we are showing them as what we call reach-in freezers and fridges, so not built-in. They would be equipment on wheels, but they would be sitting in the kitchen space. They're bigger than a residential fridge or freezer, about 4 or 5 feet wide, a couple feet deep, and 6 feet tall. That's been what we've typically done for a kitchen this size, because a walk-in fridge or freezer is overkill for the capacity of the kitchen. And you get actually a lot more usable space when you do the reach-ins on wheels.
You end up having to walk through the refrigerator usually into the freezer unless you have a huge freezer
Yeah.
with 2 doors, and the width of the door is 3 feet. So you think of 3 feet, and then you got 18 inches and 18 inches. You lose the rack space as you're walking through to get to the
We
second.
did discuss this previously, too.
Yeah, we did, and
Yeah.
I think we showed a couple examples, I think if you remember in Westfield.
Absolutely.
Westfield has a built-in, and Ludlow doesn't. And Ludlow liked the freezers on wheels, but they didn't like the layout of the fridge freezers on wheels, because one of them didn't fit. But they liked the concept where Westfield was like all in on, you know, give us a walk-in, because they make their own, they're bigger clientele, and they make 3 meals a day there.
So, can I ask a question? Sure. So one of my questions is that, you know, not at this time are we providing meals at the center.
Right.
The school system is doing that, they're making it. So one of the things that would be wonderful to foresee for the future is the potential to have everything done at the senior center. Not like, we're not talking right away, but I think we need to foresee in the future. So would it be, I think it's a discussion that kitchen is gonna be used a lot more in the future than it is gonna be in the first 3 to 4 years. So is it viable to have a standalone freezer versus the moving?
So Kingston Senior Center, which we didn't visit, had all their meals delivered by South Shore Elders, similar to, you know, they had a little warming. But every Thursday, they cook their own meal. So the kitchen, which is about half the size of this one, was more than adequate for them to cook their own meal, and they had the equipment to cook their own meal. You'll have the equipment to cook your own meals here,
Okay,
all right? Whether the fridge freezer, you know, we'll ask the kitchen consultant whether, you know, they think you have enough for, you know, 5 meals a week. I can't answer that, but I could tell, looking at that kitchen, it's a pretty sizable kitchen,
Mhm.
so.
And that was the goal, so that in the future.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll
we
be able
always
to do
thought that this would be supplementing nutrition for seniors in the near future, as things get tougher and tougher for seniors.
Terry, do you have a vision of what you think that may be in the future? Would it be like a daily?
Yes, it would be.
This would
So
be-
right now, daily, we rely on Western Intermediate Kitchen to
Yeah.
be making 70 to 80 meals a day for our home-delivered meal program. I would foresee it to be to be able to, in the future,
Yeah.
it'd be easier for the department to be able to maintain everything right in that building, so we know exactly the food in and out. But also that kitchen to not only be used for the home-delivered meal program, but also for catering events, instead of going, because we don't have to go out to halls now, we can do everything within there. So I do see that kitchen as being very highly active.
I think, yeah, I think you can give the architect a chance on this. He's got the space. He will come in with a blown-up drawing of what all the equipment is, and at that point, I think, you know, we have to have the discussion. You don't have cooks who are at a disadvantage that can say, yeah, that would work, that won't work. But maybe we can talk to one of your neighbors that has a senior center that cooks, and make sure that we have the equipment necessary based on the meals that they're cooking at their senior center. So we'll find a path to get you to a comfortable solution, but I can tell you got enough space.
Beautiful.
Right.
I'm just, you know, again, bringing up the future plan for that, and just for our thought when we design it.
The space that's shown here and some of the equipment that are shown here, this is bigger than a kitchen that's a commercial kitchen that was designed for a 300-unit senior housing building in Cambridge. It's about, they weren't going to be cooking every meal for every resident, but they have a 10,000 square foot community center. They went with the reach-in fridges and freezers just like this. I think they had 1 and 1. We have 2 and 2 here. They have a little bit more dishwashing capacity because they have a large community room. We can talk about that in the next steps as well. But this has a tilt skillet, a grill, hand washing stations, a pot and dishwashing station, the 2 fridges, the 2 freezers, and a full line of storage, as well as the serving counter and a couple of other pieces of equipment.
Gosh, it's so exciting.
So, and that's all commercial sized things, so
Okay.
like a 3-pot sink and that thing. And that island in the middle will have a dedicated hood over it, as well as a hood for the dishwashing station for
Okay.
that. So it's the real deal. Any other questions? All right.
That won't get cut if we get low on money.
Don't cut the.
All right. The exterior architecture is going to develop in a number of ways. We're going to integrate it with the site. How do the porches and the patio, for example, fit in with the drop-off for the front door, as well as the relationship of the patio to the porch in the back? We'll develop more the service entrance for the building, so that that has all of the space allocations and needs that we need for that. And also, we're going to get into what the building looks like, in air quotes. What are the materials on the outside? What color are they? What texture are they? What kind of roof? I know this is all standing seam roof in this illustration, but half of it's supposed to be asphalt shingle, about 70% actually. So what color roof? What type of roof? In what locations? How does that work with the exposed glulam beams that are being illustrated, or the rafter tails? Where does the stone base come up? You know, what color is the window? The actual glass can have a color, or a lack of color, depending on how you go about it. What color is the frame on the storefront, on the windows? You know, all of that is going to be elaborated in design development.
You're also gonna blow up of the entrance too. I mean, one of the things that we got stuck on 3 or 4 meetings in a row was the entrance. You know, and I know Diane wants to, she's not here, but Diane.
It's still on the
wants-
list, yeah.
Diane wants to make sure the entrance is pronounced and you can see it.
Watching.
Yeah.
She's watching?
Choose your words carefully.
Okay. But I know by looking at this that that's a pronounced entrance. But those of you that are not used to seeing these type of images, we need to prove to you it's a pronounced image. And I actually think when this is all said and done, Diane's gonna like where the architect has gone. I just don't think that the architect had drawn it complementary to what was the vision in his head. So, but I think we're gonna a really, really sharp building here.
I think a lot more will come out in the details. That's
Yes,
basically it.
absolutely.
On every aspect of this, so.
For sure.
I don't mean to shoot myself in the foot, but at this time I will do so by saying, if there's something about the building that is still bothering you or that you don't feel is resolved, now is the time to address those issues before we move on. I don't want to be unresponsive to the committee and to the desires of the community if you feel that there's something truly off about this. Not to dig up old issues, but now is the time to address anything and come to a point of agreement and resolution to move forward. Because I want this, we all in the design team want this building and this project to be something you truly love.
Well, I'm happy to see that the rafter tails are now natural wood.
Thank you.
So they were white the last time.
This might be an old image.
And also, yeah, I was gonna say also, when we talking architect, or, asphalt shingles, that,
Yes, yes, this is, the
Yeah,
bigger
I-
roofs are supposed to be
know.
asphalt, the lower slopes
I
are.
wasn't picking it apart, but.
I think it looks amazing. The only thing, I also am, I immediately go to that front door. And I'm looking forward to you working your magic, softening it a little bit, making it a little bit more welcoming as opposed to structural and functional. Because I think that's the difference, is that it looks very functional.
There's no potted plants yet or anything. so-
Exactly, but there's nothing soft or inviting or anything that draws you in. It just kind of like
Well, I
stops
thought
you there.
that Diane, maybe you can text her, she wanted to make sure that it was pronounced.
Right,
And
and
Right.
how do we manage pronounced and soft at the same time?
well, that's your job. I'm happy to say. No, I think
Your
that,
job.
I think that you will absolutely get there, and I think you know probably what we're all talking about. And I have faith that it will look amazing.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I look forward to that back and forth and getting a place we're all happy with.
Lee, the other thing that I don't really see on this is signage.
I was just thinking that too.
Oh my gosh, me
Oh,
too.
look at that, great
See
minds.
that?
Like right
You know,
across the top.
Yeah.
Well, either where it's
Like
gonna
a
be or
thing
coming
on the
into
side.
the
Yeah.
facility, maybe something
I think,
that
yeah, I don't
stands
think it should be
to.
on this side, it should be on the side facing the street.
Street.
Right, maybe coming down the street, you see 2 granite pillars with, or, Wilmington.
Something
Seafood.
really nice.
Yeah.
Something
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
That matches that theme of that building.
Right.
Yeah, so something with the base
Or the
would
high
be
school.
the same as
Spending money?
our base. Yeah, we'll just draw that up for you right now.
We'll have a
We
sign
borrowed the
committee.
curbs from DPW.
An 18-inch piece of granite. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with our engineers to develop the envelope of the building. And By that I mean the roof and the walls and the insulation and the size of the windows and the performance of all those pieces, so that you have a well-insulated building that is not leaky, that performs very well, that'll be comfortable to be in, and we can minimize our mechanical system as much as possible to make it more affordable to buy and build, but also affordable to maintain and operate over its long term. And that's a complement of the building's envelope and the systems inside of it. All right. 6-week look ahead. Tried to make this bigger because I think this could be a good tool. It's still a little small, but the basic idea is, what I'd like to talk about with the 6-week look ahead is that over the next 6 weeks, between now on the 11th and the 17th of February, we are going to do the first half of DD. So at the end of this 6-week period, we will assemble our first drawing set. And it'll be an internal drawing set. It's not going out to anybody, but it'll be our first full drawing set of all the engineering disciplines, and will be our first real deliverable, internal deliverable of drawings. And to get there, there's a lot we need to discuss. It won't be everything, but it'll be the first half. And so what we have here are regular meetings planned out. They're kind of once a month for the time being. We have this one here and then another one in mid-February, but I have a feeling with all that we have to do, we might want to go twice a month. We can also decide if we want to do them half of the time virtually and half of the time in person. There'll be times when you'll probably want me to bring samples of materials or have boards of things to actually show you, like interior color schemes or exterior surface materials. So that'll be done in person. We can do a great field trip out to the office in Springfield if you want to, just for fun.
I'll pass.
Okay.
So, the virtual thing is kind of interesting. So since COVID, all of us on our side of the line have been designing virtually. And it's now been 2.5 years of designing virtually. We're putting a new school out to bid in Westfield in about 2 weeks. And we have never met in person with the MSBA.
Wow.
All right? The building committee has met with me once in person. The entire school was designed virtual. And what I find, and I would have never admitted this when we started down this path, is that the building committee members, when you're looking at plans and details on a computer, absorb it better than sitting around a table and looking at the screen.
I agree.
And I don't want you to think that we don't want to come here. We do. I love coming here, George. Right? But I think there is some merit into alternating the meetings, as long as we have enough work product for you to look at. There's definitely meetings where you have to touch and feel, and, real materials. We're gonna give you real materials to touch. But he's talking about the stone, and especially the rafters. We decided long ago that this was gonna have a laminated wood carrying system with SIPS panels, I guess is what we're doing, right? And we need to explain to you what those are, and let you feel a piece of SIPS insulation that's this thick. And so you can understand what it's gonna look like on the inside. Those are really important. Those can't be done virtually. But looking at the design of the bocce court, you can.
Yeah.
Looking at a blow-up of the garden area. You all said you didn't want the raised planters, if I remember, or less raised planters.
Less.
Less raised planters. Well, how much is less? The plan still shows, a gazillion of them. So all that ties into the bocce court, ties into the patio. Those things really are easier to see when you're like this, as opposed to around a table, in my opinion. And I hope you'll consider doing a couple of
I
these
think you're
virtual.
right.
Yeah.
No, I would agree. I think we just have to be consistent for the community, the
Well, we
public
have to be
that's
consistent
watching.
on the posting, for
Yeah,
certain.
Yeah, for sure, just so we get that information out,
Yeah, I found that when presenting plans and fly-throughs, digital fly-throughs, if there's a 3D model, it's a lot easier to see on your own computer. We can maximize the screen size so it's the only thing in front of you. And it makes communication easy. Decisions can also be more expeditious in a virtual format as well. Not that they're not public, but that we have it kind of, everyone gets an equal footing because you're all the same size square on the screen. It's a little easier to work through. So, yeah.
We may be at the mercy of the open meeting law on that stuff too, because I know that it's only been pushed out to March 22.
I think it's April, isn't it?
Well, they didn't pass the law.
I think it's just
I thought they
until.
passed the hybrid law.
Well, They
It's an
may have,
executive
I-
order, I
think they did.
believe.
I think they did too.
Well,
We can check.
it won't matter past March anyway, because we'll be at the end of DD. So I'm not gonna worry about it yet.
We absolutely have until March 22
All right.
to have virtual meetings, I know that for sure, and
I can't wait to meet in the new building where we have fresh air.
So, I think it might be beneficial getting started to meet every other week, half of the time virtual and half of the time in person. So we'll be meeting in person every month and then every other week virtually.
So one of the challenges in February is going to be that we have finance committee meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays throughout February. So I don't know if we want to hit the trifecta and go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
We
I guess
just,
if we have to.
we'll just stay with Wednesdays, I mean, that kind of works, right? And we go every other, so,
Yeah.
yeah, was Wednesdays work. We'll continue with this.
Yeah, I mean, Wednesdays have really worked well.
Right.
Jeff's just worried about me. He
The
doesn't want me to
consecutive
work.
meetings, yeah.
burnout.
Well, I mean, if you have to take a week off, you take a week off. We're not gonna get full attendance every single meeting.
No.
Although we should, because you should wanna come
I
and see
do
it,
want
and see the two of us.
But she's also responsible for the finances of the
Finances, yeah.
town, so that will supply this.
Kind of
Not
trumps
chairman,
everything else
you
I
chairman
do.
this year?
No, vice chair, I will never do chairmanship again. Oh, did that for 3 years.
What if we cater the meetings?
I'll be here regardless.
Just so you know, the catering's coming out of the landscape budget.
Don't take it out of the kitchen.
That's right, that's right.
So our next meeting, actually, that's the,
The 25th?
as soon as you're done, we'll go through it on our agenda item when you're done with this.
This is my last slide. The design team, in the meantime, will be meeting internally with our engineers on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, depending on how much we need to talk about. So we'll be turning in the background and doing a lot of the kind of working through that we had been doing as a group before. We'll be now doing that and bringing you results.
I do wanna ask the committee, you have consistently trusted George's opinion when it came to the bones of the building, or the structure, or the HVAC systems, or the electrical panels. If we have this minor decisions in that manner to be made between meetings, it's okay if we set up a Zoom with George and walk through it with George, because he has to maintain it anyway. So you guys are okay with that, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Any conclusions that are come to in those meetings, we will make sure to bring to the public venue
Absolutely.
so that they can be approved in this, but it's a way of guiding the design. All right, so the next tasks coming up over the next couple of weeks will be the room data sheets in the beginning of the exterior design review. Hint, anything that you don't like that you want to have reconsidered, like the front door. Let's get it out of the way. And then the next couple of weeks will be the beginning of the exterior materials study, as well as the integration of the building. There's not really decisions to be made on the integration of the building. That's just our work that we have to do, and we'll bring conclusions to you as that happens. That will then move into February, where we're hoping to do those meetings again with the departments in town, fire, police as necessary, planning.
So what I see missing from this is the site component, unless it's buried in there somewhere.
The
Civil?
Civil
I
with
really
the-
would like it if, you know, you and I and George can have a Zoom with your civil engineer to get working on the DOT piece.
Yes. Yeah, I made a note of that, and we will put that in under their list immediately.
Can I ask, sorry, another question? When it comes to the police and fire, that's something that you speak on the sidelines. And, I mean, you speak with them and
Yeah, that's-
show them, and then
you
they
don't
don't
have
have
to
to
do
be a
anything.
part of the
No.
meeting or any of that?
You
Okay.
can be a part of that meeting with police, for example, if there are particular security concerns or operational configurations that you want to discuss as far as access or safety, that kind of thing. When it comes to fire, it really is how do they want to get their fire apparatus around the building?
Okay.
What kind of access do they want? How wide is the lane? That kind
Need
of
to
thing.
be.
But when it comes to security, you're welcome to join. I mean, you're welcome to join all of the meetings, of course. But when it comes to security, that might be one that you might benefit from.
Planning and DPW may say they want changes to the way we've laid out the parking lot. Planning might say we don't like, intersections at a 30-degree angle. We want you to find a better way to do it. DPW may say we don't want any trees in your parking lot. We don't care what planning says. We don't want trees because we want to be able to plow it. So there's all those tugs that we have to go back and forth with all the departments, each of them doing their job
Yep.
for the best for their department. And we'll find that well-balanced plan that everybody will be happy with.
So one of the things that we should talk about in terms of a date, typically when projects of any type come through, we have a community development review team, which is made up of all the major players, police, fire, DPW, engineering, even the assessors on the committee. There's a slew of different departments. And they all meet. Valerie Gingrich, the planning director, chairs the meeting. And that way, it's kind of one-stop shopping. The developer, in this case, comes in, lays out their plans, and everybody critiques it. They'll typically get information in advance, so they know what they can have comments ready to go. So with this project, you may want to consider something like that,
Absolutely. That's a great suggestion. I'd much prefer that one stop. Yeah. Let me know when and where, and we'll be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably should talk about, just from a timing standpoint, should that happen in February, or what general?
I think the best for us to do would be for Lee to talk to the planning director and see the type of development, and they'll talk in their jargon, how far the development needs to be before it's a waste of the round table's time.
Right.
So that they can actually have input. So 'cause sometimes, having sat on that round table as a member in a different town, sometimes they come in and there's just not enough information. So we want to make sure that if we make contact beforehand, we can then tell them what about the target date will be. We'll schedule it in, and
That's up to, we can set up a meeting with the
Yeah.
Planning and Conservation Director, so I could talk to
Yeah.
Valerie, and maybe we can set something up.
Great.
I don't think we.
And then just one other question, and you may have covered this previously, but there'll be a point here in the near term where you'll be sitting down with Terry to go through the very particulars of each of the rooms. You referenced that room data sheet, but you'll be going through all that? Okay,
That'll be one of our very next tasks.
okay. Good, thanks.
Stay tuned.
March 31.
Oh, so we have till March 31st on virtual?
Yeah.
So you can do a virtual meeting up till March 31st, so we'll be through DD.
And they may extend that, and they may.
Yeah.
may
Yeah, most
permit.
likely.
I think they will.
Especially with COVID.
Yeah.
That's a huge benefit. I think we can get quite a lot done before then.
Okay.
Right?
So, yeah, to respond to your comment, Jeff, getting enough information developed to make that conversation after we talk to planning effective, but not going so far that they feel like they've been left out, or they bring up something that becomes very difficult to accommodate is the best plan. So we'll work on this.
I'm guessing DPW's at that meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, so DPW may, ask for a certain type of port in the stormwater. You know what I mean? Fire may ask for access on 3 sides of the building. Planning may not like, stripes to be white. They might want them to be yellow so that they can be seen in the snow. Those type of things get flushed out at that roundtable meeting.
I had one more item on here, but we don't need to talk about it because we already ruled it out, which is advertise for CM at risk. So that's the end
Okay.
of my presentation.
Any questions, discussion?
I seem to recall, and I could be getting the projects confused at this point, but did we have a discussion at some point about whether we were looking for a generator or not, and how did that get left?
Yeah.
I believe we have a generator in the project
Yes.
Okay.
at this point in time.
But we're not sure if we're going to get one.
No, I believe we have a generator in the project. I believe that when we did the value engineering meeting, we added the generator in, 157,000. We took out, I forget what we took out, do you remember?
Stamped concrete
We
and
took
ended
out
up,
stamped concrete,
Yep.
and we added $200,000 for,
WCTV.
WC, no, that
No, that was.
was the
town
other
hall.
project, that was town hall.
we added in the generator for a little over 188, I think it
Yeah.
was, and we took out the stamped concrete, which ended up being 157,000 add.
I thought we
That's in the
still
budget.
hadn't had a final decision on the generator.
You're absolutely right.
Oh, okay,
Your
but
memory is
it's
good.
in there as a
It's that we
placeholder
didn't decide
if we want it,
exactly how
right.
big it was and how many things were going to be accommodated by the emergency generator. But the emergency generator and the associated electrical equipment to allow for that switch over to an emergency
We do
power
that for an
source.
add-alt, is that what we're going to do?
It was an adult, but it was absorbed into the base number.
It's in the project right now, when the engineers are, who, you know, they have to draw up the loads.
Right.
If the generator's an oddball size or too large, you know, we'll talk about running certain things. You know, usually we run the fridges, the freezers, and the lights,
Right,
and security.
life safety.
You know, it's,
Because there was also a question of how to fuel it,
Yes.
whether we're gonna have a gas line come in or do propane, correct?
Diesel.
Diesel,
Diesel.
okay.
We have natural gas there, so, yeah.
Well, that is an excellent question, and you're bringing up some of the things that we need to make decisions on, which are what the mechanical systems are, and if it's going to be an all-electric building, or if there's going to be gas for the commercial kitchen, if that's enough to make a big enough service to bring gas to the building for the commercial kitchen if it's not used that frequently, or if we need to bring it to also for the generator.
if you have an all-electric building, bringing gas to the building will be a cost.
Yes.
If it's not an all-electric building and you have gas furnaces, it won't be a cost. The gas company will pay to bring it in. So there's a back and forth we have to do with even something as simple as that. So, we like diesel generators more than the natural gas generators because you get more output out of the diesel than you do the natural gas, and,
They consider that uninterruptible, which I'm not, yeah,
they're,
The diesel?
yeah,
I would disagree with that too, but.
yeah. I disagree with it, but that's kind of, we've discussed that at other projects. Jeff, does that answer your question?
Yes, yep, good.
I can't remember why I brought up the plan, but
Yeah. Okay,
Next,
that's it.
that's it, thank
do you
you.
have anything else on the agenda?
Any other questions? Yeah, actually, we just, do you have another
No,
question?
no.
We were just going to talk about upcoming meetings. We already have the next steps, obviously.
We are gonna put out, in conjunction with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen in the October meeting, that was so long ago, we are going to put out another newsletter in the next week or so, just defining what design development is,
Oh, okay.
and what the building committee will be doing in the next few months. Kind of an overview of what we went through tonight, so that the public can stay aware as they have all the way through.
Should we plan our next meeting, say the 25th, or is that,
Virtually the 25th, if we can do virtually, we'll let you know the end of next week.
okay? So we should be keeping our every other Wednesdays kind of
For
open?
now,
So we'd be looking at the 8th, February. The 22nd is February vacation, school vacation. I actually will not be around for that, the 22nd.
if it's virtual, you can be.
If it is virtual, I can
We
be.
will provide you a laptop.
I will have a laptop.
So you're saying the 8th and the 22nd then?
So 25th, the 8th, and the 22nd will just tentatively be holding those spaces.
Say that one more time, George.
25th,
Virtual,
yep, 8th,
in person.
and the 22nd virtual. We'll confirm all that. Agendas will go out.
We're gonna be in good shape. We got a plan.
It's very exciting.
Yes, it is.
It's really exciting when you drive down the street, you don't know what's going on behind the fence, and then the next 2 weeks later, you drive by and they're putting the roof beams up, and you go, holy smokes! It's a building!
Long time coming.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no public, there's no public comment. Any other discussion?
Diane has sent me 3 messages saying gas is better, gas is better, gas is better. Bring gas to the building, so.
We'll be discussing that,
You're
so.
gonna get a presentation from the engineers, right?
You're a chef.
So they're gonna get a presentation on gas.
Real
first.
quick
Gas.
gas.
Okay.
The kitchen's gonna
Any other discussion?
Having a big-
And I'd entertain a motion. Motion to adjourn. Second, Paul Malroney. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much.